Hello boys and girls, welcome to my channel, I'm for Classic and welcome to BenchART. So for today what I do have in it is Chronos Before the Ashes. This game it is developed by Gunfire Games and it is using Unreal Engine 4. So Gunfire Games are the developers behind games like Darksiders 2 Definitive Edition, Darksiders 3 and also their most recent project before this one. It was Remnant from Shadows, and this one it is Chronos. Remnant from the Ashes. This one is Chronos Before the Ashes. I'm sorry. So for this video, I will be using 1080p with absolutely maximum settings on my 8-year-old and half HD 7850. So these requirements are quite interesting. So they do recommend an FX CPU, we have a Ryzen, they do recommend, yes, they do recommend 8 gigabytes of RAM, we have 16. They also do recommend an RX 580 or an NVIDIA GeForce 970 or as a minimum an R7 370, which is pretty much what we have in here. So I don't really understand these minimum requirements over here because with maximum settings at 1080p I was able to get pretty much an experience over 60 frames per second. I could only count like 3% of the time the frames were lower than 60, but if I did reduce the quality to high settings or if I reduce it to median, the experience were always above 60 frames per second. Alright, I'm not really sure why I've gone maximum settings on this video. Possibly high settings or even median was a better choice, because honestly the difference in graphics between median, high or maximum in this game, they are very small, almost unnoticeable. So if you need to go with median settings, just go ahead, because it just looks fine anyway. The only setting which I did notice most of the difference, it is when you go below median settings. When you go low settings in this game, it just looks awful, out of place. The shadows looks awful or out of place. Even when disabled, there is some sort of weird lightning stuff going on. So my recommendation, it is for you to go with either median, high or maximum. It is up to you. Of course, the higher the setting, more often the game will drop from 60 frames per second in a demanding area. It's just, I don't really know why I've gone with maximum. Possibly my best choice was median because it was more consistent overall, but whatever the setting you go for, your experience will be overall above 60 frames per second at 1080p, and that for me doesn't make any sense why they say that our card it is the minimum. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I think developers needs to start to specify better what they consider to be the minimum settings, or if this is for 1080p 60, 1080p 30, I don't really know, but it looks weird. But the thing is, at least I'm happy. So I'm having this 8.5-year-old GPU running this game that, yes, despite it is using Unreal Engine 4, it is not pushing the graphics. They are not using high-end stuff in here anyway, but still we are able to play maxed out 1080p 60 frames per second the majority of the time. And this is awesome, because that's something that I wasn't really expecting to do anytime soon. And, well, it's working in here. So now that we have talked a little bit about the performance, let's now talk a little bit about the game. Chronos Before the Ashes, it's a Souls-like game, and it's still some elements from Dark Souls. It is a little bit more clunky though, so this might be a little bit disappointing in that regard. People say that the game it is super clunky, but I feel that most people are exaggerating a bit, unless forward into the game it gets worse. I don't really know. One of the top features of the game, and this is the selling point of this game, I can't stress this enough, this is the major selling point of this game. It is the character's age. I mean, you start your character with 18 years old, and every time you die inside the game, your character gets older by 1 year. So you start the game with 18 years old, you just died, and then when you restart, you get your character with 19 years old. So your character gets old every time you die. Good luck with that. At first, I thought this was a bad thing, but in case of this game, it actually is a good thing, because the older you get, the more access to skills and stuff to the character you get. At first, it is easy to evolve agility and strength because you are, you know, a young boy, but the older you get, the harder it gets to evolve agility, and the game tries to force you to make you learn arcane because you are now older and wiser, and obviously you don't get, it is not easier to get agility evolved. I think it's an interesting concept and something really unique, but honestly I haven't seen people very enthusiastic about this, and in my honest opinion, I think it could be implemented in a much better way though. The game also features some interesting puzzles inside the game, but according to some users, after mid-game they just drag and start to become something like boring fetch quests. Although at start they are pretty good, and it's a good fresh air to the genre. As for the maps, they aren't really inspiring at all, and I'm not really talking about the graphics. This game, it isn't pushing the graphics that much. They don't make usage of high-end features from Unreal Engine 4, and I'm absolutely fine with that 100%. The thing is, the art style of the maps, they are not really memorable. They are just a bunch of corridors with some details, and well, that's pretty much about it. The game story, if you don't like the gameplay, might be what really keeps you inside the game. But above all, to not spoil you, this is a prequel from the Remnant game. And, well, the objective, it is really just to kill a dragon. Essentially, the dragon, it is summoning monsters, and that's about it. You go and kill the dragon, and that's it. That's mainly the story. Of course, there will be a ton of lore and details inside the game, but I can't really tell you about it. Still, I do enjoy the game. It's not the best Souls game out there, for sure, but at least it is not a straight copy. It has some nice puzzles, the age mechanic, it's very lightweight and optimized, so if you have an old hardware you can really run it, as you saw on my videos. And it's not totally expensive. You can get it by the time of this video for $29.99, so it's not cheap and not expensive. I think it's a good price. Metacritic, it is also around 72, so it's rather acceptable. But Steam community have a very mixed feeling about the game, because, you know, there is a thing about this game. Chronos Before the Ashes, it is not exactly a new game. It is actually a port from the original Chronos, which was released like 3 or 4 years ago. And this game was specifically made for VR. So the fact that you are buying a game that it is non-VR and it's a port from a VR game with 40 years old, I mean, and they are charging you $29.99 for a game with 40 years old, which was not specifically done for this. I mean, it's a little bit complicated to recommend. And I think that for some part, some people are complaining about that. But the other part, it is really the uninspiring combats, the uninspired enemies, and the maps overall. And the fact that some people complain a little bit about the combat gameplay, they don't like it. For me it was fine though, but I do understand that it is not at the same level as a Dark Souls, for example. So if you played Remnant recently, this will feel like a very big step back for you in that regard, alright? So I think that's all that I want to talk about Chronos Before the Ashes. Hope you keep enjoying the rest of the gameplay, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
I know not of your kind, stranger. Dark days these are, not the best of times to wander so far from one's homeland. What brings an outsider to these forsaken halls? Destroy the dragon? 'Tis a fool's errand. especially in the wake of the woeful encounter between the King and the Cyclops. You may as well throw yourself upon your blade. Listen here, Paleskin. Those blasphemous priests took my most valuable piece and used it to build a false Cyclops. Sheerest idolatry. But the vile, cursed golem they created is too powerful for me to challenge. Although, if you were to retrieve the golem's eye for me, I would use it to forge a weapon. A weapon I would give to you freely.